We are breaking down UCLA's 65-56 win over the Ducks of Oregon, in which the Bruins overcame an awful offensive performance in the first half. We're going to cover some of the Bruins' offensive woes and defensive breakdowns in the first half, as well as cover what changed for the Bruins in the second half. The Bruins jumped out to an early 4-0 lead, with Jaime Jaquez picking up right where he left off by taking advantage of mismatches on the perimeter and beating them off the dribble using his fantastic footwork around the basket to score. But he picked up 2 early fouls, which really stymied the Bruins' offense for the rest of the half. And it was, most notably, Tiger Campbell seemed to attempt to pick up the slack with Jaquez on the bench, but really struggled against the Duck length as the Ducks contested Tiger around the basket, along with his runners and his elbow pull-up jumpers. It took until halfway through the first for Coach Cronin to finally rest Tiger, and I believe if it were not for Jaquez in foul trouble, I think Cronin would have pulled him earlier to settle him down a bit, considering he was just completely out of rhythm in the first half. And Bailey also struggled offensively in the first half again, as the Ducks' length challenged his shot on the break, and on this possession as he mishandles the ball. But it was Jalen Clark who carried the anemic UCLA offense by attacking the Ducks off the dribble, as he seemingly got into the paint whenever he wanted and used his spin repeatedly to get his shot off often. And after not playing much against Stanford, the freshman Dylan Andrews stepped up and helped pick up the slack in the first half, finishing with 6 first half points. And an area where you like to see Andrews improve on is in his in-game three-point shooting, as he's currently shooting 9% from 3. As you can see here, the Ducks defense daring him to shoot this one. And I think his decision making can improve as well, as on this possession, the Oregon defender closes out, wanting to force Andrews' baseline, but he's a little too high with his top foot, leading me to think Andrews has the edge on the drive, but elects to pull it from 3 instead. And on the defensive end, we saw Bona get into foul trouble again, but on this possession, he defends it perfectly as he places his hands straight up. And as you'll see on the following possession, he elects to bring his arms down just a bit, giving the referees the license to make the foul call. And if he could just learn to be more disciplined and defend and contest with his hands straight up in the air, this will go a long way in keeping himself out of foul trouble. But Bona isn't the only Bruin who needs to play with more discipline, as Andrews leaves his feet on this play, leaving the Ducks with the up and under. And again, we get another Bruin leaving his feet. This time, Singleton leaves his feet and gets beat up on an up and under. Next, we're going to cover some Jalen Clark miscues on the defense end, as here Clark loses vision of his man by completely turning his head away from him, allowing his man to cut in for the score. Next, we get a ball screen, and Clark doesn't even attempt to show till Tiger gets through, or even try to communicate a switch, which allows the Ducks to get an easy pull-up from the elbow. This time, Clark gives a real poor effort to get through the ball screen, as Etienne is a little late on the show, leaving Tiger stuck as a tag man, and his size makes it really tough for him to make a play on the lob. Here the Ducks set a weak side flare screen on Clark, and again he doesn't fight to get through, making him a tad late to return back to his man, and then he bumps and fouls him on the way up. And based off the coaching staff's reactions to Clark's miscues and lack of effort, they were clearly frustrated with the young man all half, as Clark has a tendency to just cruise a bit on defense. And I get the frustration with Clark. He's their best on-ball defender, and when he's locked in on the defensive end, it elevates the Bruins defense, and I believe the staff is still trying to get him to buy into being locked in for the entire game. And defensively, the Bruins showed some run and jump pressing in the first half with mixed results. With the run and jump, the idea is to bring a late trap. Bailey must force the ball handler towards the sideline, and once the ball handler turns his head away from Clark, that is Clark's time to come from behind and trap. Once the ball handler begins to make his way up the floor, Bailey has to use the sideline to cut him off and send him back middle, where Clark should arrive to make the trap. Next, Tiger should be anticipating and putting himself in a position to jump the pass back to 4, and should at the very least arrive on the catch by 4. Bona would then rotate to Tiger's man and Jaquez down to Bona's man. Instead, Tiger gets stuck in no man's land, and the Bruins allow 4 to penetrate middle against a trap, which is a huge no-no, and it leads to a Jaquez foul. This time the Bruins trap from the sideline, and they let the inbounder clear out, and that's when the trap occurs, and it forces Oregon into a turnover. And the Ducks also showed some soft 1-2-2 half-court traps that fell into man in the first half. And the idea is to force the ball towards the sideline and to trap upon crossing half-court. Here, Tiger crosses with a dribble and almost turns it over. And even with Hawkes and Boda sitting quite a bit of the first half, the Bruins were still able to hold the Ducks at 27 points in the first half. And to start the second half, we get a great read by Hawkes, who anticipates and counters the Oregon switch by slipping the ball screen, and Bailey hits him for a layup. And it was clear with Hawkes back in the lineup to start the second half, gave the Bruins offense a boost as they would go on to score 44 second half points to their 21 in the first half. And even though Tiger takes and misses a tough and very deep three here, he shot the ball much better in the second half, and while he wasn't perfect, he was able to get into somewhat of a rhythm offensively in the second half. And Amari Bailey also joined the party in the second half as well by getting into the paint and hitting some tough contested shots. And on this possession, the Bruins run an empty corner ball screen with Bona, which is a play I feel the Bruins need to run more. Since the corner is empty, there's no tag available for Bona, and this forces Bona's man to have to show and then quickly return to Bona to avoid the potential lob. And teams like Oregon will be hesitant to show too much because of not wanting to give up the lob, which, as you can see, leaves the lane open for the ball handler as we see Bailey get to score. And for most of the second half, it was really a back and forth affair as the Ducks and Bruins traded baskets, as the Bruins defense really struggled against defending the drives, giving repeated paint touches to the ball handlers on drives. And here, Bona is late to show on the ball screen and leaves too much space between himself and the screen and gives up a split. And again, he fell asleep on this behind the ear pass, but it was nice to see him playing straight up with his hands and avoiding foul trouble in the second half, even though Dante was able to convert on him on a couple scores. And the play that may have sealed the game was a Tiger baseline drive skip pass to Singleton, who does a nice job of making the extraversal pass to Bailey, who pulls up. And what really secured the win for the Bruins was the defense, as it was able to hold the Ducks to only 11 points on the last 10 minutes of the game. Overall, I think Hawkes' absence in the first half due to foul trouble led to the Bruins' worst offensive performance we've seen for a half. But credit also needs to go to the Ducks defense, whose length really affected the Bruins in the first half and even to some extent in the second. But the Bruins were able to clamp down in the final 10 minutes of the game and pull away from the Ducks for their second conference win. Thank you again for checking out the breakdown, and we'll be back to break down the Bruins against the Kentucky Wildcats on the 17th.